I never thought I'd be locked out of my own childhood home, especially not on the day I buried my father. That mansion, perched on a quiet hill in Virginia, wasn't just made of stone and glass. It held every memory of my mother's laughter, my little brother Noah's first steps, and the values my father once said were worth more than gold. But as I stood at the wrought iron gate, turned away by my stepmother's cold smile, I realized the house had become something else, entirely a fortress hiding lies. I'm Victoria Hayes, a lieutenant colonel in the U.S. Air Force. I've led teams into war zones and survived the worst mankind has to offer. But nothing prepared me for the betrayal waiting inside those walls. This isn't just a story about inheritance. It's about legacy, justice, and the fight to protect what my parents built before it's erased completely. I still remember the day the call came. I was halfway through a tactical briefing on base when my phone buzzed. It was Noah. My younger brother never called me during duty hours, especially not in the middle of the week. I stepped out, heart pounding. "Noah?" His voice was trembling. "Victoria, it's Mom. There was an accident." I froze. "What kind of accident?" She didn't make it." The world tilted. I stood under the blistering Virginia sun, uniform tight against my chest, but suddenly I felt like I couldn't breathe. My mother, Margaret Hayes, was the heart of our family. The kind of woman who remembered every birthday, recited poetry by firelight, and made cinnamon rolls from scratch on Sunday mornings. And now she was gone. By the time I got home, the mansion felt like a tomb. Noah ran into my arms, his face buried in my coat. "She's not coming back, is she?" I couldn't answer. I just held him. Our father, Richard Hayes, once a towering figure in finance and in our lives, sat slouched in his leather armchair. His eyes, always sharp and commanding, were dull-dread from crying. He held one of Mom's scarves like it was the only thing keeping him grounded. "I didn't even say goodbye," I whispered. For weeks, the house was quiet. No more piano music echoing through the halls, no more Mom's laughter. Just silence and shadows. Dad returned to work almost immediately. He didn't speak much, barely looked up from his computer when I visited. Noah, just 12, stopped drawing. He'd always loved sketching the woods behind our house. But now he'd sit curled up on the couch with the scarf Mom had knit for him, eyes empty. I tried to be strong for Noah, for Dad, for myself, but grief didn't follow rank. It seeped in through every crack, and I began to realize the house that once felt like home was starting to feel foreign. On the day of Mom's memorial, I stood beside her portrait in the church we had all loved. I gave the eulogy with a voice I barely recognized, strong on the surface, broken underneath. "She taught us that love was strength," I said, "and that real legacy isn't measured in money, but in kindness, honesty, and presence." People clapped softly. Noah cried quietly. Dad didn't say a word. I thought that would be the hardest chapter of my life. But I was wrong. It started with a dinner invitation. "Just come by," Dad said over the phone one night. "I want to introduce you to someone." His voice sounded steadier than it had in months. I wanted to believe that meant he was healing. So I dressed in something respectful, but simple, picked Noah up from his art class, and we drove through the familiar iron gates. She was already seated at the dining table when we arrived. "Victoria," Dad said, gesturing with forced cheer. "This is Vanessa." She stood and offered her hand. Her blonde hair fell in perfect waves, her designer dress hugging her figure like it had been tailored for the occasion. Her smile was dazzling, but it didn't reach her eyes. "I've heard so much about you," she said warmly. "Your father talks about you all the time." I nodded, polite. "That's funny. He barely talks to me at all." There was a pause. Vanessa let out a soft laugh, but her grip on her wine glass tightened. Then came her daughter Brielle. She strolled into the room like she owned the place. 14, the same age as Noah, but with a smirk that belonged to someone much older. "So, this is the famous mansion," she said, looking around with mock curiosity. "Kind of old-fashioned, don't you think?" Noah shifted uncomfortably beside me. I placed a hand on his shoulder. We all sat down. The table looked the same. Mom's fine china, the silk runner, the chandelier casting soft light on polished silverware, but the atmosphere was wrong, cold, hollow. During dinner, Vanessa complimented the food, asked about my work, and talked about how lonely Richard had been. "I just want to bring joy back into his life," she said, reaching to squeeze Dad's hand. I said nothing, but in my chest, a knot tightened. After the meal, I helped Noah put his dishes away when I heard voices from the hallway. "I don't get why we have to live with them," Brielle was saying. "Can't you tell them to move out?" I stepped into the hallway. Brielle's face went blank. Vanessa turned, startled but only for a moment. "We were just discussing the logistics," she said smoothly. "It's a big house after all." I stared at her. "It's not a house. It's our home." Vanessa smiled. "Of course, and I want to be part of it." But I already knew. She didn't want to join our family, she wanted to replace it. Later that night, Noah pulled me aside. "She moved Mom's painting," he whispered. "The one over the fireplace." I walked into the living room and froze. The portrait of Mom in her garden gown. In its place was an abstract piece, sterile and loud. That's when I realized Vanessa wasn't just here for Dad. She was here for everything. It wasn't one big blow. It was the little things that chipped away at us. Noah stopped sketching in the sunroom. Vanessa had turned it into a yoga studio, complete with mood lighting and glass walls. "Natural light damages furniture," she said when I objected. Brielle made herself at home quickly. Too quickly. She'd roll her eyes at Noah whenever he spoke, mimic his voice, laugh when he stuttered. "You're such a little baby," she'd sneer. "Is that why your mom left?" Noah never responded. He just looked down, shoulders tense, fists clenched. One night, he called me while I was still on base. "Victoria." She tore it. "Tore what?" "The drawing. The one I made of Mom's garden." Brielle ripped it in half and flushed it. Said Mom doesn't live here anymore. I drove home at midnight. When I walked into the living room, Vanessa was sipping herbal tea. She looked up, surprised but not alarmed. "We need to talk," I said, voice sharp. She smiled. "Of course. I'm always open to communication." I clenched my fists. Brielle bullied my brother. She destroyed his drawing, something he made to remember our mother. Vanessa sighed. "I understand emotions are high, but children fight. We shouldn't overreact. Don't dismiss this." She tilted her head, her expression softening artificially. "Victoria, I know it's hard letting go, but this house is evolving. We all are." That word evolving burned in my ears. It wasn't evolution, it was erasure. I turned to my father, who'd been standing quietly behind her. "Dad?" He looked at me. His eyes were weary. "I don't want more conflict." Conflict? My little brother was being emotionally crushed, and he wanted peace? "I'm taking Noah," I said finally. "He doesn't deserve to live like this." Vanessa gasped, but it was performative. "You can't just—" "I can, and I will." That night, I helped Noah pack. He held onto the torn pieces of his drawing, tucked between the pages of Mom's poetry book. He was silent, but his hands trembled. At the door, Dad stood in his robe. "This is still your home," he said quietly. I turned to face him, tears burning behind my eyes. "No, Dad. It was." Noah and I walked down the long driveway under the moonlight. I didn't look back. We stayed in my on-base apartment that night, small, plain, quiet. But for the first time in months, Noah slept through the night. I knew this wouldn't be the end of it. But at least, for now, I'd protected him. Life outside the mansion was quieter but not easier. Noah transferred to a boarding school in Massachusetts, one with a strong arts program and a campus nestled in the hills. I'd scraped together the tuition with my military savings and some help from Mom's old trust. He didn't want to go at first. "I'm leaving everything behind," he whispered, standing at the train station with his sketch pad clutched tight to his chest. I knelt beside him. "You're not leaving home, Noah. You're just leaving the house. Home is with the people who love you." He looked at me, eyes red. But Dad? I shook my head. Dad made his choice. Now we make ours. When the train pulled away, I stood on the platform until it vanished into the trees. My throat ached from holding it all in. Back on base, I buried myself in training. Days blurred into weeks. Missions came and went. I earned 2 commendations. Commanders praised my focus. But each night, I stared at my phone, willing it to light up with Dad's name. It rarely did. And when it did, it was short. "Glad you're safe," he'd say. Or, "Vanessa says hello." Every call felt more like a business transaction. The man who once read me Roosevelt quotes in the study now barely remembered my schedule. Vanessa was always in the background, always helping, always answering the phone first. "Your father's resting," she'd purr. "But he's thinking of you." Noah, meanwhile, was thriving academically, but I could still hear the hurt in his voice every time he called. "Victoria, does Dad ever ask about me?" I lied at first. He does. But one day, I couldn't anymore. "No, he doesn't. I'm sorry." There was silence. Then Noah exhaled. I kind of knew. Years passed. I rose through the ranks. Noah entered his final year of high school. We built a quiet life away from the mansion's shadow. The house faded into the background, but it never disappeared. Until one rainy afternoon. I was in the middle of a logistics review when my phone rang. It was Noah. His voice was frantic. "Victoria, it's Dad. He's sick. Really sick." I stood up, chair scraping hard against the floor. "What happened?" "Liver cancer. End stage. One of his old friends, Mr. Langston, called me." Vanessa never said anything. I didn't hesitate. I requested emergency leave, packed my uniform, and booked the next flight to Virginia. This time, I wasn't coming as a daughter looking for peace. I was coming as a soldier prepared to fight. I landed in Virginia just before sunset, the sky bleeding orange behind dark clouds. The air was thick, humid, and heavy with things left unsaid. The gates to the mansion loomed ahead, taller than I remembered. I rang the bell. Vanessa answered. She stepped out in a silk blouse, her hair perfect, her expression unreadable. "Victoria," she said with that same false warmth. "You came." "I want to see my father." Her tone was calm. "He's resting. The doctor says no visitors." "I'm not a visitor. I'm his daughter." She sighed, folding her arms. "You're being emotional. This isn't the time." I clenched my fists. "You've made it the time." 2 guards stepped forward from the hedges. I recognized one. He used to help my mother carry groceries when she had migraines. Now he stood between me and my dying father. I stepped back, heart pounding. Then I did what any soldier trained for conflict resolution would do. I called the police. "Fairfax County Dispatch," the operator said. "How may I help you?" "My name is Victoria Hayes. My father is gravely ill. I'm being denied entry to see him at our family residence." The cruiser pulled up 20 minutes later. The officers listened as I explained. Calm, composed, every word precise. I watched Vanessa from the corner of my eye. She was already rehearsing her part. "I'm just protecting him," she said sweetly. "He's so weak." The officers nodded, but one turned to me and whispered, "You're his legal daughter. Let's get you inside." They walked me through the gate. The mansion looked the same, but everything inside screamed of Vanessa. Cold grays, modern fixtures, no more portraits, no more books, no scent of gardenias. Upstairs, in the master bedroom, I saw him. My father. He lay on the bed, frail, skin yellowed, eyes sunken, tubes snaked around him like ropes he couldn't escape from. My chest tightened. I knelt beside him. "Dad, it's me." His eyes fluttered open. For a moment, just one brief flicker, I saw the man I remembered, the one who used to braid my hair on Sundays when Mom was too tired. "Victoria," he whispered. I'm sorry." Tears rushed to my eyes. "Why didn't you call me? Why didn't you stop her?" He struggled to speak, but his voice cracked. "I was weak. I thought I could fix it, but I lost you." You didn't lose me, I whispered, clutching his hand. I was always right here. Vanessa appeared in the doorway. Okay, time's up. The officers exchanged glances. It's okay, I said quietly. I'm done. But I wasn't. As I stood, the guards returned. You need to leave, one said, firmer this time. Vanessa's voice snapped like a blade. Now. I turned to her. He's still my father. And now he's my responsibility, she replied, smiling thinly. I didn't fight. I walked out, but every step felt like retreat. At the gate, I turned one last time to the house where I was raised. A house filled with music, birthday cakes, lectures about integrity, now silent. I didn't just lose my father that day. I lost every last piece of the life we once had. 3 days later, my phone rang again. It was Vanessa. Her voice was flat, rehearsed. Victoria, I'm calling to inform you that your father, Richard, passed away early this morning. He died peacefully. I said nothing. She continued. The funeral will be held this Saturday. You and Noah are welcome to attend. She didn't sound like a grieving widow. She sounded like a lawyer reading from a script. I picked Noah up from campus myself. His face was pale. She didn't let us say goodbye, he whispered on the drive. He was our dad, Victoria. I nodded, but my hands tightened on the wheel. At the church, the same one where we held Mom's memorial, Vanessa and Brielle stood at the front in black. Their tears looked choreographed. The way Vanessa clutched her lace handkerchief made me feel physically ill. I kept my head down, holding Noah's hand. After the service, we tried to visit the mansion. Vanessa stood at the gate, dressed in black silk and pearls. I'm sorry, she said with a carefully tilted head. But this house now belongs to Brielle and me. Richard left it all to us. You'll have to speak with our attorney if you have any questions. She handed me a document with my father's signature. It looked real, too real. Noah stared at the paper, horrified. Dad wouldn't do this. He wouldn't. I felt my stomach turn. She forged it, I said quietly, or pressured him into signing. We left without saying another word. But I wasn't letting it go. The next day, I made a call to Grayson, Fieldman LLP. Mr. Harold Grayson had been Dad's attorney for over 20 years. When I showed up at his office, the old man looked at me with watery eyes. I wanted to call you, he said. But Vanessa blocked everything. Phone numbers, access, even had me removed as executor. I told him everything, the will, the funeral, the mansion. Grayson sighed and unlocked his file cabinet. He pulled out a thick manila folder. Before your father got really sick, he created a private trust. The house and asset she wanted them to go to you and Noah. My heart pounded. But the will? I've never seen that version, he interrupted. It's either forged or signed under pressure while he was no longer lucid. I sat back, overwhelmed. How do we prove that? We'll need records, witnesses, and if we're lucky, an original backup of the trust. Maybe someone in his company kept it. I nodded. Then I'll find them. I called Noah that night. She's lying, I told him. Dad didn't abandon us. He tried to protect us, and now we're going to finish what he started. For the first time in days, I heard a spark in his voice. What do we do? I smiled through the pain. We investigate. We began with people who knew Dad closely, his driver, old assistant, even the gardener. Some were afraid to talk, but others hinted at how Vanessa slowly isolated Dad during his illness. She fired loyal staff, controlled visitors, blocked communications. Then came a breakthrough. Clara, the old housekeeper, agreed to meet me at a park. Your father didn't want this, she said, her voice shaking. But sheesh controlled everything. I heard her talking to a new lawyer, not Mr. Grayson, something about cleaning up paperwork. It wasn't a full confession, but it was a crack. Later that week, Grayson called with something bigger. Victoria, he said, voice urgent. I've tracked a copy of the trust. One of Richard's former associates might have a digital backup. We're close. And for the first time since Dad's death, I felt something I hadn't in weeks. Hope. It took 2 weeks to get into court. Vanessa tried to delay everything: filings, appearances, even jurisdiction challenges, but Grayson was relentless. He petitioned the court for an emergency hearing, presenting evidence that a prior trust existed and that the will Vanessa submitted might be invalid. Vanessa's attorney, a sleek man named Whitaker, called the allegations emotional slander. He left everything to the people who cared for him in the end, he said, casting a smug glance toward me and Noah. Not the ones who walked away. Noah flinched beside me. I took his hand. We never walked away, I said calmly. We were pushed out. The judge agreed to a temporary injunction. No property transfers, no asset liquidations. A neutral review would be launched. In the weeks that followed, the fight turned brutal. Vanessa and Brielle arrived at every hearing dressed like they were attending fashion galas. She clutched tissues. Brielle wore black eyeliner and a mask of grief. They painted me as the angry soldier, estranged from her father. He wanted peace in his final days, Vanessa testified, voice trembling. He told me Victoria only brought conflict. I said nothing. Let her perform. But Grayson was building our case. We compiled staff testimonies, email chains, transaction records showing sudden transfers of Richard's assets into Vanessa's accounts while he was undergoing palliative care. Then, one morning, Grayson called me with fire in his voice. Come to the office, now. He met me at the door holding a USB drive. An old colleague of your father kept internal backups from the firm. We found a PDF digitally signed and time-stamped. It's the trust. The original. I stared at the screen. There it was. Dad's clear instructions. The mansion and 85% of his estate were to go to Noah and me. Vanessa would receive a small stipend in appreciation of companionship during illness, nothing more. There was even a video clip, a private message Dad had recorded. Too weak to write by then, but still clear of mind. If you're watching this, something went wrong, he said. Victoria, Noah, I never forgot you, never stopped loving you. This house, it's yours. Protect it. My knees buckled. Grayson caught me by the arm. This changes everything, he whispered. At the next hearing, we played the video in court. Vanessa went pale. Whitaker tried to object, but the judge overruled him. Let it play. When it ended, silence filled the courtroom. For once, even Brielle stopped pretending to cry. Grayson stood. Your Honor, we believe the will, submitted by Mrs. Vanessa Hayes, is either forged or signed under coercion. The original trust backed by time-stamped data and video clearly outlines Mr. Hayes's true intentions. The judge looked toward Vanessa. Her mask cracked. She fumbled for her tissue, but her hand trembled. The judge banged the gavel. The court finds the trust to be valid and binding. The will submitted by Mrs. Hayes is hereby nullified. All assets shall be returned to their intended beneficiaries, Victoria and Noah Hayes. It was over. Vanessa didn't cry this time. She stood slowly, gathered her purse, and walked out without a word. Brielle followed, staring at the ground. Noah clutched my arm. Did we just win? I nodded. We did. But I didn't feel triumph. Only peace. Noah and I returned to the mansion not as outsiders, but as heirs. We walked through the rooms where Mom once read bedtime stories, where Dad used to sip morning coffee beside the grand piano. Most of their belongings were gone, replaced with cold art and designer furniture. But the bones of our childhood were still there. We stood in the garden. Noah brushed his hand along the empty soil beds. Do you think she'd be proud of us? He asked. I didn't need to answer. He already knew. We didn't move back in. The mansion was too big, too quiet, too full of ghosts. Mom's voice didn't echo in the hallways anymore. Dad's study smelled like dust and expensive regret. Noah walked through it slowly the first evening, running his fingers along the banister, peeking into every room. I thought it would feel like coming home, he murmured. But it doesn't. I nodded. Because the people who made it home, they're not here anymore. We sat in the sunroom now, emptied of yoga mats and designer decor, just glass and wind and silence. I looked at Noah, now taller, older, but still holding his sketchpad like armor. "I've been thinking," I said quietly, "what if we turn this place into something better?" He looked up. "Like what?" "Something Mom would love. A place where kids like us kids who've lost people or been pushed aside can learn, create, grow." He blinked. "You mean, like a center?" I smiled. "Exactly. An art and leadership center. For underprivileged youth. Call it Monroe House." His smile bloomed slowly. "She would have loved that." We began the transformation that fall. Noah, with his sketchpad and memory, designed a mural in the Grand Foyer glowing forest, like the one he used to draw for Mom. I reached out to my military network, building leadership workshops and mentorship programs. We converted Dad's office into a reading room filled with poetry. The ballroom became an art studio. The garden once stripped of Mom's roses was replanted with help from local kids. We even found her favorite variety, heirloom whites with blush, pink edges. On opening day, I stood on the second-floor balcony, watching children run across the grass where Noah and I once played. Their laughter was different, but healing. Noah came up beside me, arms crossed, eyes glassy. "Victoria," he said, "we did it." I nodded, tears welling. We didn't just get the house back, we brought it back to life. That evening, we lit a lantern for each of our parents. One floated over the garden, and I imagined Mom watching, her smile in the clouds. Another flickered over the mansion's stone arches, and I could almost hear Dad's deep voice say, "A legacy isn't money, it's what you build in others." I forgave him in that moment. For the silence, for the weakness, for letting someone like Vanessa in. Because in the end, he didn't leave us nothing, he left us values, and we honored them. Vanessa and Brielle never returned. Word was they moved south, surviving off the small portion left to them in the trust. Part of me hoped they found peace. Another part didn't care. We'd already moved on. Years later, a news piece titled, "The House That Became a Sanctuary," ran in a local paper. Monroe House had become more than a mansion, it had become a haven. And me? I stayed in Virginia, continued serving part-time in the Air Force, but this was my new command. I wasn't just protecting a building anymore, I was protecting a legacy. And that's how you heal a house, haunted by betrayal. You fill it with love louder than the silence.